The night before my wedding, I thought I was preparing for the happiest day of my life. My white dress was fitted and hung up in my room, the flowers were ordered, and the guests had already started arriving in town. Everything was perfect, or maybe even more than perfect. Until that day, until that night. And with that one sentence I heard, everything I had dreamed of was shattered. Leon and I had been together for 3 years. He came from a well-known family in both Germany and the US. He was smart, successful, and kind. At least, that's how it seemed. I thought my life was complete with him. Especially his mother, Elizabeth, treated me like I was her own daughter. For someone who had grown up without a family, that bond was priceless. His sister Miriam was like my best friend. Everything was like a fairy tale. And like every fairy tale, there was a truth. Fairy tales didn't really exist. That night, I went to the hotel where Leon's bachelor party was held to deliver a forgotten pair of cufflinks. Elizabeth had specifically wanted these antique cufflinks, passed down from his grandfather, to be on Leon's wrist during the wedding. The hotel staff knew me, as we had organized many charity events there over the years. I was directed to the private room. The door was slightly ajar. I could hear Leon's laughter from inside. Then that sentence, "Isabel? She's just a temporary option. She's a perfect display until someone better comes along," Leon said, his voice a little slurred from alcohol but still crystal clear. Something inside me broke. It wasn't just my heart. My soul was shaken. I froze by the door. Blake, Leon's best friend, asked, "Do you really think you're going to marry her?" Leon answered without hesitation. "She looks perfect on paper. No family, completely loyal to me, doesn't question anything. Financially useful. Plus, she's great PR. But in the long run, of course, she'll be replaced with someone more suitable." I gripped the small velvet box tightly. For a moment, I wanted to throw everything to the ground. But I didn't. I didn't cry. Instead, I took a deep breath. In that moment, a different woman awoke inside me. A warrior. Someone broken, but not giving up. I took the elevator to the top floor, but instead of going to Leon's room, I headed straight to my apartment. I opened my computer. I thought about all the access Leon had given me in the business world during our time together. Passwords, accounts, partnership documents. I wasn't just his fiancée. I was also an invisible but influential partner in his projects. I researched the documents until morning. Bank transactions, internal communications, funds being funneled overseas, and, of course, secret emails under the name Rebecca, Leon's girlfriend on the company board. After the wedding, they were planning to move abroad. That was the plan. With my money, under my name, he was building his future. But I was no longer part of that plan. No, I was the end of that plan. By the time the sun filtered through my window in the morning, there was an odd calmness inside me. It was as if the weight of a fake life had been lifted from my shoulders. As I did my makeup, my hands didn't shake. The dress I wore wasn't for a wedding anymore. It was for battle. It wasn't white anymore. It was a cold wall now. When Elizabeth arrived, her eyes were teary. The bouquet I held was arranged with her elegant taste, white peonies and pastel roses. "You look like an angel, Isabel," she said. I smiled. But I wasn't an angel anymore. I was a mirror. I was there to reflect the truth. When Miriam fixed my hair, our eyes met. "Leon is such a lucky guy," she whispered. It made my heart ache. The only sentence in my mind was, "Will you still think that when you hear this?" It was 11:43. The final confirmation came with a message from the private detective. The documents were complete, the press was there, and the police were ready. Everything was in its place. The last move was mine. And I had memorized every word in this scene so they wouldn't forget. When I arrived at the church, the air was hazy. The sky seemed to know what was about to happen, gray and heavy. The excitement of the guests gathered outside was in sharp contrast to the cold calm that settled over me with each step I took. My makeup was flawless. My dress flowed elegantly over me. But inside, Isabel had already died. In her place, someone who carried the truth was born. At the end of the corridor, Leon was waiting, smiling, as if everything was exactly as it should be. The priest standing next to him, the hundreds of guests behind him. They all thought they were witnessing the final scene of a fairy tale. But this was no fairy tale. This was the final act of a lie. I took my first step. With every step, Scenes from the past played in my mind. Our first meeting, the heartfelt conversations at that charity event, the future we had planned together. Now all those memories were spinning like a blank film reel. Every sweet word Leon had said to me was actually part of his own interests. And I had been a tool in that, fully complicit. I gripped my bouquet tightly. I could feel the presence of the envelope hidden in the hem of my dress. That envelope was no longer just evidence, it had become a weapon. A strike that would be delivered at the most unexpected moment. Miriam was ahead of me, along with the other bridesmaids. Her eyes were sparkling. I knew she'd be crushed. This fake arrangement had consumed not just me, but the innocent ones as well. Elizabeth was seated in the front row. There was pride in her eyes. Oh, Elizabeth, what a huge disappointment you're in for, I thought to myself. But there's one truth you need to know. Your son is not the person you believe him to be. Leon's gaze was on me. There was a hint of excitement, a hint of triumph in his eyes. It was as if everything was going according to plan, and actually, it was. He just didn't know who had written the plan. As I passed by the rows of guests, I could hear their whispers. She looks so beautiful. Leon is so lucky. These words hit my ears like iron. Fancy sentences with no connection to reality. Yet, I was no longer swimming in this sea of lies. As the priest's lips were about to move, I took a step back. Leon leaned in to take my hand, but I didn't take his hand. I drew strength from my own will. I turned and faced the guests. The church grew silent. Time seemed to stop. From within that silence, my voice emerged. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few lines with you, but these aren't from a holy book. These are quotes from Leon's private emails. Murmurs began in the hall. Color drained from Leon's face. Rebecca, sitting in the front row, gripped her purse tightly, her body tense. Blake started shifting uncomfortably. All eyes were on me. And I wasn't running away anymore. Dear Rebecca, I began reading. When the wedding happens and we gain access to Isabel's funds, we can move forward with the company merger. Right now, she suspects nothing. Some guests were holding their breath. Elizabeth's eyes were wide open. Miriam's mouth hung open. Leon, on the other hand, looked frozen in place. His smile had long faded. The reality hitting his face was cracking the walls of his fake world. I transferred the company funds to the account in Malta, I said, raising the second document. No one should find out about my meetings with Blake. Isabel's not stupid, but I haven't given her a reason to see the truth. Enough, Leon shouted, taking a step toward me. But I had already put some distance between us. No, Leon, not now. Now you're going to listen. Just like that night when you disregarded me. Now I'm going to bury you in silence. At that moment, the doors of the church opened again. 2 officers in suits entered. The press followed right behind them. Flashbulbs went off. Cameras began rolling. Everything was being recorded. Leon tried to reach me in a panic, but I opened the envelope and dropped all the documents onto the floor. The papers spread through the hall like silent screams of guilt. This isn't just a wedding cancellation, I said. This is the fall of a mask. This is the fight for the justice of people who've been deceived for years. Leon fell to his knees, shock, anger, and helplessness in his eyes. And I was finally free from the world he had created. When I walked out of the church alone, my expression was neither anger nor victory. It was simply clarity. A storm had passed, and I was left amidst the debris. As the cameras flashed in front of me, I didn't look away, because I had nothing left to hide. As I walked out that door, one thought filled my mind. The truth didn't break me. On the contrary, it lifted me up. The press waiting outside was lined up, eager to ask hundreds of questions. But I just raised my head, looked at the sun, and smiled. This wasn't an end, it was a beginning. A beginning woven with freedom, pain, and the brutal yet cleansing light of truth. The first few days were chaotic. Everyone was talking. Newspapers were running headlines like, "Wedding Exposed. The Mottenberg Dynasty Falls." Yes, Leon's family was like a dynasty, a structure with untouchable power, controlling everything for generations. And I had quietly set off a dynamite in the middle of that structure. In my office, watching the news unfold on my computer screen, I didn't have a cup of coffee in my hand, but a new plan. I had delivered all the documents to the relevant authorities. Not just Leon, but dozens of people working with him were being questioned. Accounts abroad had been frozen, and the company's financial statements were under investigation. The SEC had started an official investigation on charges of fraud and money laundering. But everything wasn't as simple as just solving it with documents. The wounds opened in hearts were the hardest to heal. Elizabeth didn't contact me the first day. On the afternoon of the third day, my doorbell rang. There she was. Her eyes were red, and she held a small velvet box in her hands. "Cufflinks. These are yours," she said. "A person like you, honest, should have them in your hands." "No," I said softly. "They belong to the past, and I don't live there anymore." But she insisted. Then she fell silent. We sat down. I made tea. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, she broke the silence. "I didn't raise my son to be this way, Isabel," she said, tears spilling from her eyes. "But over time, I didn't see how he changed. Or maybe I didn't want to see." I took her hand. "Change is painful for all of us, Elizabeth, but sometimes destruction is necessary to open someone's eyes." A bond formed between us with that sentence. What was destroyed wasn't just a wedding. It was a fairy tale. And sometimes, the end of a fairy tale isn't happy, but it's educational. That evening, Miriam called me. She was crying. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "I was with you that day. I could have helped." "They wouldn't have believed you," I said. "You wouldn't have believed either, because you wanted to believe he was still the same child." The phone fell silent. Then Miriam's voice came again. "That child is dead, Isabel, but you're still standing. And that makes you strong." That's when I understood. I hadn't just exposed a man. I had also revealed a truth that had been suppressed, ignored, and pushed to the background as a woman. I had torn apart the role of the perfect bride that women had played for centuries, and that tear was giving not only me but others the space to breathe. Weeks passed. Investigations deepened. Leon couldn't escape. A warrant was issued for Rebecca's arrest. Blake was called to testify as an accomplice. My old life was transforming, just like the earth after a volcanic eruption. But the best part was this. A new seed was sprouting. I had decided to start my own company, an independent consultancy focused on corporate ethics, developing in-house transparency systems. Isn't it ironic? Well, Leon wanted to use me as a decoration. I was building my own summit from his downfall. One morning, while sipping my coffee in my small but peaceful office overlooking Central Park, my phone rang. It was the business school of Columbia University. The Montgomery scandal was being added to their curriculum as a case study, and they were inviting me as the speaker. In that moment, one sentence echoed inside me. This isn't revenge, this is rebirth. Winter had slowly started to reveal its face. The air grew grayer with each passing day, but for the first time in years, I could see colors within me. It had been weeks since Leon's mask had fallen. The companies, the stock markets, the newspapers were all in turmoil. But this time, the focus of the news wasn't his victories, it was my truth. I was no longer just an abandoned bride, I was a woman with a voice. My consultancy firm was growing faster than I had expected. Not only small entrepreneurs, but even large corporations were seeking my guidance. Because now, everyone had realized, truth will surface, even if it takes time. And some destructions are the only way to rebuild systems. One morning, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, Claire was standing there, an ethics professor from Columbia University. Her eyes were sparkling with excitement. "We want to work with you, Isabel," she said. "Your story is one that will be a lesson for our students. But not just as a story. We want to rewrite the ethics curriculum with your approach." I paused for a moment. I swallowed, and then my eyes filled with tears. Because the voice that had been unheard for so many years was now going to be a compass for the next generation. "It would be an honor for me," I managed to say, "but I don't just want to tell my story. I want to tell the truth, the systematic silences, the invisible threats, and the strength within us." That day, Claire and I sat together for hours. We outlined course topics. We prepared case studies. Of course, the Montenberg incident, my story, would be at the center of the course. But not as a story of victimhood, as a story of transformation. Weeks passed. I gave talks at universities. I participated in panels. The media started calling me the ethical bride. At first, it sounded strange. But then I began to write the meaning of that title myself. Then one day, an envelope arrived. The handwriting on it was familiar. Elizabeth. What came out of it pinned me to the spot. The precious pearl necklace from the Montgomery family, and a letter. "Dear Isabel," it started. "These pearls have been a symbol of silence and the status quo for years. But you didn't silence them. You made them speak. You became the conscience of this family, not its enemy. These pearls now belong to you. Because they need to be worn by someone who will carry them with pride. And that person is you." Holding the pearls in my hands, I had transformed a symbol of the past into something for the future. I put them back into their box and hung them at the entrance of my firm. I added a small plaque beneath them. "Where truth hurts, transformation begins." But the story didn't end there. Because a few weeks later, an unexpected phone call came. It was Leon's lawyer. "Mr. Montenberg wants to meet with you, personally." I paused for a moment. Even hearing that name still left a faint coldness inside me. "Why?" I asked. "To apologize," the man said. "And maybe try to understand you." Diana and Miriam opposed the meeting. "He's done so much to you, Isabel. Why take the risk?" they said. But a voice inside me told me that I needed this confrontation. This wasn't for his forgiveness. It was necessary for my own completion. A week later, we met face to face in a prison visitation room. Leon was no longer the man he had been. The well-dressed, confident man was gone. In his place was someone older, more tired, but more real. "Thank you," he said, "not for ruining my life, but for taking off my mask. I didn't deserve you. Never have." "I know," I said, "but I didn't come here to confront you. I came to say goodbye to myself." I had changed, too. I was no longer living for his forgiveness. I was living for my own path. As I left the visit, the sky had darkened. A light rain had started. But inside, I felt peace. Because my story was no longer just about him. It was about me. And that night I made a decision. I wouldn't live this transformation alone. I would reach out to women. To those who were silent. To the suppressed. Claire and I started a new fund. I chose the name Phoenix, a symbol for every soul reborn from its ashes. And when the first support letter for the fund arrived, the paper I held in my hands was the summary of everything. There, in small letters, it said, "I too tore down a fairy tale. Now I am writing my own truth." Months had passed. I was no longer known as Leon's ex-fiancée, but as ethics consultant Isabel Winter. I hadn't changed my last name, but its meaning had completely shifted. It no longer represented the silence of a woman. It now symbolized her rise. The Phoenix Foundation was growing. Every day, we received new applications, heard new stories, and gave women back their voices. Claire had been my biggest supporter throughout this journey. She too had stepped out of the shadows left by her brother and found her own light. Our bond was now drawn not on paper, but in life. Conferences at Columbia, an invitation from Harvard, universities were beginning to see me as a living case study. But amidst all this success, one man caught my attention. His name was Julian Becker. Born in Frankfurt, educated in Boston, and a professor of corporate ethics for many years. He was the kind of person who told my story not through articles but through people's consciences. We met on stage, where he was in the audience. Then, after the talk, he came to me backstage. "I watched your presentation," he said, "but at one point I wasn't looking at your speech, I was looking into your eyes. Because in that moment, you weren't just talking about it, you were living it, and that's something you don't read in books." For the first time, someone noticed the tone of my silence, not just the sound of my voice. One coffee, another presentation, and then a joint project later, our paths crossed even more. Julian wasn't in a hurry. He didn't try to remind me of my past or rush me toward the future. For the first time, I felt like I could walk without competing with a man. And that was revolutionary for me. One evening, as we were walking in Central Park, he stopped. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a notebook, tore off a page, and handed it to me. "I wrote this morning," he said. "I want to be patient enough to understand you when you're silent, to say the things I couldn't bring myself to say. The paper only had one sentence on it. I don't want to love you, Isabel. I want to understand you, stand by you, and walk this path with you. In that moment, my eyes filled with tears, because for the first time, a man had come to me not for himself, but for me. But I still carried a hesitation inside me. The emptiness in my heart wasn't just about Leon's betrayal. It was about a love I hadn't given myself for years. Julian knew this, and he patiently waited. When Claire learned about this relationship, her face lit up. I've missed seeing your smile, Isabel, she said. Maybe you deserve not an end, but a new beginning. And then Diana, yes, Leon's mother, invited me to her office one morning. She came holding an old, leather-bound notebook. This was my mother's diary, she said. She wrote about the struggle of surviving as a woman. Every line gained more meaning after meeting you. I want to share it with you, because you've rebuilt the honor of our family name. A shiver ran through me. The weight of the deception that had seeped into this family for years was now being replaced by something else. The truth, the connection, and transformation. That evening, Julian and I attended the Foundation's annual gala. It was a dazzling night, but it wasn't the sparkle that shone. It was the stories of the women inside. I took the stage, grabbed the microphone, looked at Julian, and then to the whole room. I'm not going to tell a fairy tale here, I said, because fairy tales often bring pain to women. But truths, they heal. Telling the truth isn't easy. But sometimes, the greatest love isn't saying, I love you, it's saying, it's safe for you to be real with me. Julian smiled. He understood. Everyone understood. At the end of the night, a slow song began to play on the dance floor. Julian extended his hand. To walk together, you don't need to know how to dance, Isabel, he said. You just need to hear the rhythm of the heart. I took his hand, and in that moment, I realized that I no longer carried the weight of the past on my shoulders. I carried it as a memory within me. And now, this memory gave me strength. 3 years after my wedding day, I received an invitation, a simple envelope with handwritten letters. Sender, Leon Montenberg. At first, I squinted my eyes. My fingers didn't tremble at the edge of the envelope, because I wasn't the woman I had been that night anymore. No word written on that envelope could shake me. But still, I opened it. Because some wounds, to heal, require not just time, but confrontation as well. Dear Isabel, the letter began, the most painful lesson I learned within the prison walls was this. What made me fall from your eyes wasn't what I did, it was that I never truly knew the real you. Now I realize that your silence was the echo of my downfall, and this invitation is not just an apology, but a thank you. In the rest of the letter, he mentioned organizing a small meeting with his family, and that he wanted to, quote, repair what was broken, not with a sentence, but with a stance. Claire, Diana, and even Julian supported me in doing this, because this wouldn't be a closure, but a completion. And so it was. At the old Montenberg estate, amidst the autumn leaves that had started to fall, a table was set. The table held only a teapot, a few fruit plates, and the weight of the years. Leon sat across from me. He wore a simple sweater, and his eyes held no mask. For the first time, he wasn't hiding himself. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said, but I want to thank you for what you've taught me. I now know that your power isn't in destruction, but in restoration, and you showed me that. I looked at him, into his eyes, and I said, I haven't forgiven you, Leon, but I'm not angry with you anymore, because you gave me the most valuable thing, myself. If you hadn't said that sentence that night, I'd still be trying to exist in your shadow. But now, I have my own light. He extended his hand. I closed the notebook with my own hand. We didn't shake hands. We didn't hug. But we understood each other. The past was now just a story. And I wasn't the person telling that story anymore. I was the one rewriting it. Months later, we took the opening of the Phoenix Foundation to Europe. In Frankfurt, Berlin, and Munich, hundreds of women began to write their own stories, and each one knew Isabel's one sentence. Truth sometimes hurts, but the real poison is the lie. The training programs Julian and I ran transformed even corporate boards. In the business world, ethics was no longer an option but a necessity. and we were a part of it. The man holding my hand by my side was not just a partner, but someone who walked with my values. Claire took over the European arm of Phoenix. Diana began giving talks on corporate transparency. Each of them had picked up their broken pieces and built something whole. And this whole was no longer just a victory, but a legacy. In the end, I donated that old wedding dress. Through a charity, it reached young women who were victims of domestic violence. That dress no longer represented a betrayed life, but freedom. In every stitch, there was resistance. And now, here I am, in my own home, watching Central Park through the window. As my newborn daughter Emma sleeps in my arms, I write these lines. I won't tell her a fairy tale. I will tell her a reality. I will say, "My daughter, your mother became known not by a man's name, but by her own voice. And your name comes not from a man's lineage, but from a woman's rebirth." Because sometimes, the greatest victory is not saying yes to someone, but saying enough to yourself. Sometimes, the greatest love is not starting with someone else, but making peace with yourself. And sometimes, the greatest revenge is not destroying someone, but rebuilding yourself. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. To grow stronger together, get inspired, and discover more truths with each new story, share your thoughts with us in the comments.